Uh, Professor Jaideep Sharma, a professor at the School of Social Sciences, IGNOU, and all the participants, a very good morning to you all. I, Professor Preeti Mahajan, on behalf of the Department of Library Information Science, Punjab University, Chandigarh, and on my own behalf, welcome you all in the 20th webinar, which is a part of the webinar series being hosted by the department on the theme Information Generation, Dissemination and Use during COVID-19 lockdown. The webinar series are being organized at the time of an extraordinary situation emerging out of the global pandemic and the consequent lockdown when almost everything has come to an abrupt halt. And in such a situation, online learning and online meeting has become a new normal for all of us in all kinds of academic activities, including the continuous professional development. The theme of the webinar series thus was selected in order to update the professional knowledge through dissemination of information on cutting edge technology and utilize the period of lockdown in productive academic activity. Now, I take this opportunity to introduce the speaker of the national webinar today. We have amongst us Professor Jaideep Sharma. He is currently working as professor at the School of Social Sciences, IGNOU. He also worked at as University Librarian IGNOU during 2014 to 2018. He did his PhD in the area of professional competencies and curriculum in LIS education from Sambalpur University, Orissa. Prior to joining IGNOU, he has also taught at Kurukshetra University during 1989 to 2003, wherein he took active part in organizing other extracurricular activities of the university as well. He has been associated with various professional activities like acting as a reviewer with professional peer-reviewed journals. He has also edited special issues of journals like Annals of Library Information Studies and Decidoc Journal of Library and Information Technology, and has also acted as a joint editor of Library Herald. He has been regularly delivering lectures at various platforms in universities, research institutions, etc. He has been a member of the Board of Studies of many universities and is associated with designing curricula as well as guiding PhD students. Besides being the coordinator of MOOC certificate course in 2018, he has also taught an online refresher program recording videos for URPIC program. He loves to interact with professional colleagues on areas of professional interest in formal and informal discussions. His specialization includes library classification, library cataloging, library automation, information processing, and retrieval. He has authored 3 books, edited 2 books, wrote 5 chapters in books, and more than a dozen research papers. Today, Dr. Jaideep Sharma would be speaking on research misconduct, implications, and impact. May I now request Professor Jaideep Sharma to deliver his talk, please? Professor Jaideep Sharma, please. May I request Dr. Sheikh to switch off the video? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Preeti. A very good morning to all of you. Before I start, I would like to record my appreciation and gratitude to the Punjab University, Department of Library and Information Science, my colleagues in the department, Professor Preeti Mahajan, Professor Rupak Chakrabarti, Dr. Shiv Kumar, and in case I'm forgetting others also who are there in the department, and also the students and research scholars of the department. My very good morning to my professional colleagues who are here. I'm really not aware. There might be some very senior colleagues also, and some of my maybe contemporaries, peers, class fellows. A very good morning to all of you. So it is on the invitation of the department that I thought I should talk on something which is useful for all of us, particularly my young friends in the department. So I thought I should talk something on research. In research, I have been hearing a lot about the the unethical research that practices that are prevalent today, I thought let me choose some area would really benefit all of us. And since I have been watching retractionwatch.com, I related my topic to retractionwatch.com. So it is how the idea of discussing this topic came to my mind. I'll be sharing my slides before I really start. Now it is there.
Yeah, thank you.
The view is fine?
I'm going to mute myself now.
The view is okay? Fine?
Yeah, it's fine. Perfectly fine.
Okay. So research misconduct, implications and impact. So I'll start with why I chose the topic. As I was telling you, it is because of the currency of the topic that I thought we'll be discussing this. And then in case there is misconduct in research that we do, it masks the basic purpose of research, because when we talk of research, we need to be original in doing research. And you need to be scientifically doing it. We need to follow some procedures and processes that are standard procedures and processes. And if we fail to follow all those, then research, the whole purpose of research is defeated. Therefore, misconduct in research is really something which we need to avoid. And since many of us who are here, participants, almost all of us are concerned with this subject, because I was told researchers of the department, teachers of the department, many of you who are supervisors, including me, and many of us are policymakers also, we need to really take on this problem that is confronting us. Therefore, I thought I should talk on this topic. Now, what I intend to discuss today is that I'll give you a definition or two of the concept. We will discuss the concept. I'll give you some examples that exist, and then we'll come up to the implications that are there due to this, and then we'll discuss the impact. Also some suggestions for corrective action in the area, and finally I'll make it open for all of you to have your views, suggestions, feedbacks, and I would like to improve upon myself. I would like to learn more with your views coming in. As you have seen that the subtitle is implications and impact. So I was just thinking that there might be different views, different thoughts coming to all of you, that what I intend by implications and impact. So I thought, let me limit myself. When I use these two words, basically by implications, I would be limiting myself to the consequences, particularly the immediate consequences of research misconduct. And then I'll come to the impact, which is a major influence due to the misconduct on the profession, and also it's a long-lasting effect. So this is how I differentiate the two terms, implication and impact. Now, we'll begin with what is research misconduct. I think we are all very well aware of plagiarism. We have been discussing plagiarism at different forums, and now we are also doing in our libraries plagiarism tests, and we as researchers, as supervisors, we are really getting it done, and we are quite aware of it. But when I talk of misconduct today, I'll be talking very less of plagiarism and many other things that are there in misconduct. You would realize that many of these things we are not experiencing in our discipline, particularly because it is in the sciences, in the hard sciences, that we are feeling the pressure and we are feeling the consequences of research misconduct. And I think with time, we'll also realize that these problems will creep in and we'll also be facing it. And otherwise also, as librarians, we need to know what is happening in the other disciplines. And therefore, I thought it's very important for us to know what is this misconduct that we are hearing a lot these days in all parts of the world. Now, I give you a standard definition here given by the Office of Science and Technology Policy, Washington, D.C. And just to have an idea of what all is included in misconduct. It defines research misconduct as fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism in proposing, performing, reviewing, and reporting research results. So there are three components: fabrication, falsification, plagiarism. So as I was telling you, we have been hearing plagiarism. You find here two more: fabrication and falsification. And also very important that this is there in proposing research. That means when we are preparing a proposal, as we generally do in the form of a synopsis, in performing the research, and this includes reviewing the research also, and also in reporting research results. So in the synopsis, in the thesis, and it includes fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. Now, another definition that was given by Fanelli, I have given you because there is a little difference, a slight difference in slant. It says any omission or misrepresentation. It tries to clarify fabrication and falsification. It says any omission or misrepresentation of the information necessary, because in case we omit or misrepresent, it affects the result. It does not convey the real picture, the true picture. Therefore, it may be intentional or unintentional on the part of researcher. Therefore, we have to be very clear about it, that any omission or misrepresentation of the information necessary and sufficient to evaluate the validity and significance of the research at the level appropriate to the context in which the research is communicated. So this is another definition with slight more explanation. I believe that you would have also noticed, which I also noticed, that these two definitions do not talk about the incompetence of a researcher. You find that there are certain aspects that have been found, that have been reported in these definitions, but they do not really mention the problems that arise due to the incompetence of a researcher. Now, another quote from a very important person who has been writing a lot in misconduct, and that shows that it is very important that research should be something which can be repeated, something which can be reviewed, and therefore he says that scientific knowledge is reliable, and it is because that it is subject to criticism and replication. Therefore, we should be very sure as researchers that what we do, it should be that others should be able to repeat it. We should be able to repeat it. And why? Because our research these days, it is all available in the open. Therefore, it is subject to criticism and replication. So research is always reviewed. Therefore, when we are doing research, we should take care of these things. So when we talk of misconduct, what are these characteristics that lead to misconduct? So what are the characteristics which enable a research to be really liable to be called that it is a true research, it is not misconduct? So these are the characteristics: that the research should be significant. One should be working on an area which is significant. That is a very important characteristic of research. If the significance is not there, that means it may lead to problems in research. It should be valid. It should the validity is a very important characteristic of research. Reliability is another important characteristic. And these days we are using the term reproducibility. I'm a little confused whether there is any difference, but as far as I feel, they are used interchangeably. And when we studied research, we were talking of reliability, but these days, because we are talking of reproducing the research results, therefore this term is more used in the literature. Truthfulness is very important in research. You know, in research, we even mention the limitations. We try to mention what we could not do. We mention what we did not intend to do and what we could not do in spite of intending to do. So truthfulness is very important. Trust is another important thing in research. It's a very important characteristic that the trust that has been imposed on us, we should come true to that trust. So if trust is violated, that result into misconduct. So these are very important characteristics of research. Now let us talk of these one by one. Significance. You know, whenever we are doing research, we should have a problem in mind. It is the problem that really excites us to do the research in that area. It is the problem that gives us a clue that yes, research needs to be done. And generally, in particularly, if we would have seen around us, we will see that people are not really able to come out with a problem that they have explored while they were doing research. So it is the problem that gives us the significance of the research. It should be an extension to the existing knowledge. It should not be a repetition of already explored. Now, what is validity? Validity, we all know, is something that we intend to measure, and we are really measuring that. So if we are measuring what we intend to measure, it says that yes, the validity is there. And there are different types of validity. It is of the tools that we are using. Then we would have seen a standard literature, face validity, content validity, construct validity, internal validity, external validity, and the statistical conclusion validity, criterion related validity. I have given you the link here. It very clearly defines and describes all these different types of validity that you may, if you would like to consult, you can go and see. And then many good standard textbooks and other books on research also explain these validity, because validity is a very important characteristic of any research. So now, reliability, as I was telling you, that reliability means that consistency of measurement. Though there is a little difference when we talk of social science research and research in the sciences, the reliability and validity, because the area that we are concerned with are different. Therefore, at times the reliability is not to that extent as it is there in the sciences, but then still it has to be reliable when we talk of research, because this is what is, if we are really following the scientific approach in research. As I was telling you, these days in the literature you find the use of the term reproducibility, and I saw a survey that was done, and the status of reproducibility is such, as you see on these screens, that all of us feel, yes, it is a crisis these days. And many of us really fail to reproduce studies done by others. And that is why you would have seen these days that when we do research, we are asked to submit the data also. The raw data has to be submitted, because we need to be reproducible, we need to be accountable, we need to be ethical. Therefore, and such is the state that the studies that have been done by others, the researchers fail to reproduce such studies with the conditions that in which they have been done. And the statistics always speak for them. 70% of such studies could not be reproduced. And all the worse is that the studies done by people, they themselves could not reproduce. In 50% of such cases, they could not reproduce. So this is really alarming, that reproducibility is affected, and that will really affect research. But still, what is really different is that 30% of us believe the literature, even if it is not reproducible. We still believe, yes, the results are that are wrong, that they still trust that literature, that in spite of the fact that such studies lack, but people are still using these studies, they believe, yes, they are fine. So this is the result of a survey, a study that was done. Now, as I was telling you in the definition, that it is fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. And these days, they also use these terms as the questionable research practices. And as I was telling you in the definitions, that it is truth and trust that is very important in research. And as I was saying, that in those definitions, the competence to research was not mentioned, was not indicated. So if you see these, you will find that these would be depicted like this, that it is, when you say fabrication, it is basically that the data has not been collected, it has been made up. And falsification means that it has been some data has been suppressed, some data has not been provided, it has been falsified. And plagiarism, we all know, it is breach of trust when we are lifting from here and there, we are not properly referencing, we are not referencing. All this we are now very clear about, so not much to say about that. Now, questionable research practices, as I was telling you, that means we are not competent about doing research. We are not in the knowledge of how to do research. We are not sure about the research practices. So all these lead to the misconduct. In case I could, I had a picture to show you here. In case I'm able to do full screen, I'll be able to show you. In case I'm able to full screen. Okay, fine, no problem. So let us move further. The earlier slide that I had showed you, that classification of misconduct is a linear classification. That was the traditional classification of misconduct. And scientists who have been studying, who have been in this area, they say that this is a better view of misconduct, wherein you have the different classes of misconduct. One is betrayal of truth, betrayal of trust, and finally class 3 they say is misconduct. And in case of fabrication, it is betrayal of truth, whereas plagiarism is betrayal of trust. And misconduct leads to risks to the safety and health, particularly when you talk of medical sciences, health sciences. And falsification is also betrayal of truth, and betrayal of trust is irreproducibility, and it also results into risk to the safety of industrial research practices. And if we are following industrial research practices, inadequate research practices, then this is both betrayal of truth as well as trust. So this is a better classification that has been given by those in the field. So this is how they have classified misconduct. Now let us come to the implications. As I was telling you, these are the immediate implications, the immediate effects that we are seeing due to the misconduct. As I had mentioned earlier also, that there is a website called retraction.com, and every day you come to know what is happening in misconduct because it is reported on this website, and this is an acceptable website. So they are doing a great service that we are able to know what are the cases that have been reported. They really come in public view so that we are aware of the misconduct that is taking place in research. Now, retraction, as the term indicates, it is calling back. Retraction literally means that they have been called back, they have been withdrawn. And these retractions of research articles, these are done at the request of editors, publishers, employers, authors. I have mentioned authors at the end because generally it is editors who do it, and it is not just immediately done. There are the cases are under consideration, and then the proceedings go on, and it takes time to finally decide about retraction. And therefore, it's not that instantly it is done. Everything is listened, heard, and then it is only finally that it is retracted. And it's a huge number that is retracted. So it is not small number. I'll tell you about this. So the reasons for retraction are misconduct in which there is fraud or suspected fraud, data or image manipulation. This is the most often happening these days. Data and image manipulation. This is very frequently happening, and this is very difficult to really find out, particularly image manipulation. There are experts. Technology is also not very successful, but there are some experts who are very well known all over the world, and they have been given views about this, and they are able to catch image manipulation and data manipulation. Errors, plagiarism, self-plagiarism, and publishing multiple versions of the paper. So these are the reasons for retraction, that articles are retracted. I would like to show you the statistics that this is per 10,000 papers. The top of the list you find Iran, and India is at number 4. So out of every 10,000 papers, 7.5 papers in India are retracted. And the median value is somewhere around 3.5. So 3.5 papers per 10,000 papers are retracted. And mind you that these are the papers that are from very well-known journals having very high impact factor. So I think that, as you have been hearing these days about COVID, that since people have not been tested, you do not really come to know of the real statistics. Similarly, I believe that in case we really try to find out, I think the rate of retraction would be very high. Maybe that I have not heard retraction in our discipline. I tried to find out from the sources also. I could not come across cases. So maybe that these journals have not been bothered, or we are not really trying to find it out. But then I think this is going to assume alarming proportions, and or maybe it will reduce, it will come down because of the measures that we are taking to stop this. Now, when articles are retracted, you find on the retracted article, they give information that what is the status, whether it is under consideration for retraction or it has been retracted, when it was retracted, and why it was retracted. What are the reasons? Who asked for retraction? So all this information is also available on the retraction.com website. So it's a very useful information that those who really want to know, they come to know everything about it. And it's all available in open, so that we are all sure why it is happening and where it happened. And very well-known articles, very well-known studies, articles by very well-known people in their fields have been retracted. So that means that in case it happens with anyone, it is quite natural. It is natural to err on the part of humans, so nothing very wrong. But then it is good to know that there are discrepancies, there are shortcomings, we really lag behind, we made a fault, and I think this gives us a chance to improve. So this should not be taken as a stigma, though it is very difficult to bear, because particularly as I have seen in the literature, studies that have been done for years together, took years for publishing, and later on they were retracted. So it's difficult for the authors to bear, but then we learn. This is how we learn. I was seeing this news item that the plagiarized books verbatim copied, and they were removed by Amazon. And when they were to remove these books, they tried to find out with the authors, and they found that the addresses of the authors, affiliations of the authors were wrong, were fake. So this is a recent news, because due to COVID, there was a mass production of books, and it was found out on the complaint by some people that these were copied verbatim from different parts, from different books, different articles, and Amazon had to retract these books, remove these books, because these are available online. So they had to remove them. So this is a recent case that I found out, not very recent. This is another case that I want to bring to your notice. This was a very well-known article, and on a very current topic, and by two authors, and it has been retracted. I have got the information from retraction.com, and this is an editorial retraction, and they mention that this is in a well-known magazine, Science, and they mention the reason why it has been retracted. It says, with the concurrence of author Donald P. Green. There are two authors. One of the authors is Donald P. Green, and he has asked for retracting. And it says that when contact changes minds, this is the article, and this is on gay marriages. The two authors are Lancor and Green. And Green asked when there was a question about the data, Green asked his co-author Lancor and asked for the original data. Maybe Green was not involved in collecting data. He was doing other things in the article. The person who collected data, he asked him and he said that it has been falsified, and therefore Green requested for a retraction, and that request was from one of the authors. The other author doesn't agree. Lancor doesn't agree, and therefore he had a it went to the court, and his attorney replied to the allegations that were there. And one of the allegations was that he made cash payments to fill the survey, and which the attorney says no such payments were made. And the other was that the statement on sponsorship was false. He has mentioned that it was sponsored, but then the attorney says that yes, it was sponsored. This is how he replied. And the final part was that it was since it was falsified, and the attorney agreed to this, and he agreed to the retraction. So see, this is how things happen. We find in studies, particularly in the sciences, there are long list of authors. So authors do different type of work. So at times authors themselves do not know that how their co-authors are working, and this affects them. Therefore, this is an example just to tell you that when we do studies as co-authors, we should be very clear what we have to do, what the other person has to do, and then we have to take up responsibilities like that. And we should also mention, as I have seen these days, it's a practice in co-authored papers, when people present them, when publish them, they mention what is being done by whom. So this is a good practice that people do these days. Another study that I would like to mention here is, it's a study of 2046 papers spread over more than 20 years. This study, and it says that 53% of the retractions did not reveal the initiator who asked for retraction, in spite of the fact that it is a standard practice these days that one should mention who has asked for retraction, and still more than half of the studies did not mention who initiated the retraction. 15% of the retractions were done by authors. It is a good initiative on the part of the authors that they themselves have realized that they are wrong and they are asking for retraction. And the study said that this number is increasing with time, that the retractions that have been asked by authors themselves, they are asked more and more are coming forward for retraction. That means people are honest, they feel that something wrong has been done, and they're asking for retraction. 21% were retractions were done by editors and publishers jointly, and 11% by editors and authors jointly. But 91% of the retracted articles fall short of reporting according to COPE standards. You know, there is a body called COPE, Committee on Publication Ethics, and they have given a detailed guideline on how to retract, what should be done in case of a retraction. I'll share with you the website of this body, and it has been referred to in the UGC also, the UGC guidelines that have been there, that we follow COPE. Therefore, we should be knowing about what COPE says. So, but then surprisingly, that these 2046 papers that were retracted were studied, and they found that 91% of retracted articles did not follow the guidelines that have been given by COPE. And another fact that was found out by this person who studied these articles, he says that the retracted articles, they do not admit the limitations. They have not concentrated on what future research could be done. So he says this is something, this is really missing in such papers, and that may be the reason that has happened, because we are not honest. We have not, though we have seen at times that limitations are there, but they are superficial. So one should be honest in mentioning the limitations, and I think that is something which has come out of this study also. Regarding coronavirus, because this is most happening in the literature, it was found within 3 months, 6 papers were retracted, and 2 were temporarily retracted, and 1 was as an expression of concern. As I was telling you, it's a phase-wise retraction. It doesn't happen immediately. There is a complaint, it's called as expression of concern. People feel concerned about the paper. So, and then the process moves on, and this is how it happens: temporarily retracted and finally retracted. And this is increasing day by day. I was reading the other day that this the treatment for COVID, hydrochloroquine, there was an article on it that it has a negative effect on the health, and it was a very talked about paper. Later on it was retracted. So retractions, because people want to publish fast, they want to be in the limelight, they want their names to be connected with the treatment for COVID, and they immediately publish, and well-known publishers are publishing their papers, and finally it is happening that such papers are being retracted. This study, I always, retraction I always mention in my talks, because this is really surprising. It's a very well-known psychologist, Eysenck, and he has written he is no more. His papers were retracted after his death. He wrote 80 books and 1,600 journal articles. So it's a very big list, but then 26 of his papers were retracted. It was long after his death. He's a very well-known person in psychology, known for his studies, and it was mentioned that his studies were unsafe because the way he conducted his studies, they lagged in the validity, reliability, and the data was not safe. And they say unsafe because these are all psychological studies, psychometric studies. So 26 papers were retracted, and it is seen from literature that in case a scientist or an author is caught in this, a long list of his papers go under retraction. This is a common practice visible in retractions. Another example about this is that this person, a Japanese scientist, he has 28 retractions, as I was telling you. And surprisingly, 3 of the papers that he wrote, which were retracted later, had 700 citations. See, so this is more alarming, that people are citing such papers. So 3 of the papers cited 700 times, and that too, his papers were the well-known journal Nature, and the impact factor is 17.728. So this also is a question mark on the peer reviewing of such well-known journals. That doesn't mean that it would not have been peer reviewed, but this is a question mark on the process of peer review, on the capabilities of the peer reviewers also. So this has really put a big question mark on the process of scholarly publications. Now, these were all implications that we were discussing. Let us now talk about, as I was showing my concern, that these retracted papers are cited. So something which lacks in quality, something which is not up to the mark, something which is not up to standard expected, this is being cited, is being used. And this is a cyclical process. Someone will cite this, the other one will cite the other one. So I think this is really very dangerous, and that is what I intend to really bring to your kind attention, that something of this has to be really thought of. Now, citations are 2 types of citations. When I'm talking of the papers that have been retracted and they have been cited, they are cited at 2 different stages. One is pre-retraction, that these papers had not been retracted and they were cited. So I think that is understandable. People didn't know that they have been retracted, therefore they cited them. But post-retraction also they are being cited. This is something which is really of concern, that people know that the article has been retracted, but they are still citing the paper. Now, the not only citation by others, but also citation by those who know that it has been retracted, means self-citation. So it is seen that they have very high citations. Now there are two types of citations. Post-retraction citations are of two types. One is positive, that I cite a paper that has been retracted and I cite it positively, means I support the article. I do not really believe that it's worth retracting. I am not with those who say it should be retracted. I do not agree with its retraction. So 83% of such articles, the articles that are citing retracted articles, out of those 83% of the articles are positively citing such articles. 12% are citing, but they remain neutral. They are not in positive or negative, and only 5% negatively cite these. That means the retracted articles are made known to others by only 5%. If 100 articles are retracted, only 5 of these articles are brought to the knowledge of those that these have been retracted through citations. So this is very dangerous. There may be either there is something wrong in the process of retraction, or there is something wrong in the thinking of the people, or they are at two different wavelengths. They are also right, they are also right. So this is really worth discussion and worth knowing, and also worth researching that how this can be improved. So what we can really think in this direction, because this is, as I was telling you, that retraction is fine. There is something wrong, it is retracted. But once retracted, it is used is alarming. And that too, majority of such, those which are used, they say it was fine. They agree with it. As I was telling you earlier also, that people are using results of retracted articles. They say, okay, fine. There was problem in the data. There's problem in the images, but they say results are worth using. So this is something, as I was telling you, one that comes to our notice is peer review. Because see, as we have discussed earlier, that when we do a research, maybe that we do not come to know of the problem areas. We are not able to really know the loopholes. That means there are people who are reviewing it, whether it is peer reviewed in journals, editors reviewing it, or in case it is a thesis submitted, the examiner reviewing it. That means if they have approved it, if they have passed it, that means there is some problem in the peer review process. And recently there is an article here which I have quoted here, that it says that false about the process of peer review. He says false theories will remain dogma simply because no one is allowed to challenge them. How many new and potentially successful concepts or ideas will never see the light of day simply because peer reviewers decide to reject publication out of fear for their own reputation and livelihood, beyond the lamentable enforcement of conformity in academia through hiring practices and social pressure. Now even the anonymous peer review process may be perverted into active censorship of unpopular ideas. So there are two aspects in this. One is that those which should not be approved, they are being approved. And those which are being rejected, they may be that they were not suitable for rejection and they are rejecting. That means new ideas that are cropping up, and in the process of peer review, they are rejected. They could not see the light of the day. So these two different aspects are really worth considering when we talk of peer review. So those who have to have a role here have to really think in this direction, how to improve this process of peer review to make it more open. Because we all know, we hear here and there that a paper is rejected and the person who reviewed it uses that paper and publishes that paper in his or her name. So that is happening. And this immoral practices, unethical practices, maybe that has a role here. I think some of the issues that I have raised here I don't know whether you agree or not, whether this will really help in improving the situation as far as retraction is concerned. Whether the retracted articles should not be available openly. Because they are available openly, people are using it. Because I would like to tell you that once an article is retracted, even if it is published in a paid journal, even if it is published in a journal which is not openly available, once the article is retracted, it is available in the open. So that is there. That is a common practice. So the positive side of this is that people should know, yes, this is retracted, therefore they are making it available in the open. But on the other hand, maybe since it is openly available, people are using it. Now, if the open availability of such article, does they mention they are retracted? If it is mentioned boldly, or still people are using, this is a point of consideration and discussion. Now, another that, okay, fine, article is retracted, but the article has been cited by different articles. So should we remove those citations in those articles, which is very difficult. I don't know how to manage this. And not only removing the citations, but also removing the parts of the text where citations are there. It's a hell of a job. I don't know whether this is possible or not. But then what to be done? Because this has to be done. This has to be taken care of. That not only removing the citation, but also the text that has been cited has to be removed. Now, for this, we need to have proper guidelines, and we have to take care of this. As I was telling you, maybe that since they are so talked of that people get interest in such articles and they are enticed into using, they want to use such articles, and therefore this may be a reason. And people feel that many of the articles that are retracted due to problems in data and image, and because the data and images have been manipulated, they feel that that does not affect the results. Similarly, if it is plagiarized and particularly self-plagiarized, plagiarization people say is wrong, but self-plagiarization, somehow people say, okay, fine, it is his or her work only. Therefore, people at times feel, yes, it can be used. It is not someone else's work. So maybe that such retracted articles are used by people, they justify due to these. I have seen the time span, as I was telling you, in Eisen's case, it was after his death. So the retraction happens maybe after a year, 2 years, 5 years. It happens after 30 years also. There are examples. But then I thought of bringing this to your kind attention that after 30 years, if it is retracted, how much damage it would have done. The whole philosophy and theory of that subject would have been based on that. And this is something worth considering. Therefore, somehow this has to be reduced, or we have to see the extent of damage that retracted articles really do to the literature in that area. As I was telling you, that it is basically truth and trust. And why it happens? Because we have so many pressures around. As I was telling you, people want to publish on COVID. They want to earn a name. They want to give a solution. They want to be in the news. So that pressure is there. So they violate truth and trust both. And the other part, as far as the sciences are concerned, particularly the biological sciences, the medical sciences, that the aspects are also very important. Methodological issues, particularly I believe in our discipline, it is the methodological issues. It is that which has to be taken care of. And data fabrication and falsification, I think that will improve with time, because these days when we talk of research, when we talk of publications based on research, we need to submit our raw data also, and that will be available in repositories. Now we are worried about our thesis, since they are available in open repositories, and now our data will also be available in open repositories. And therefore, in case there is any fabrication or falsification, it will come to notice. Though technology is not sound to that extent, it is individuals, and technology is improving day by day. There are very well-known individuals like Dr. Bick is there. She works very hard, and she has really trained many people on this area, and then with time this will improve. As I was telling you, these are the COPE guidelines, very detailed guidelines on the how to tackle the retracted articles, and this is for information of you all, that you come to know about what is retraction, how retraction has to be tackled, and I think we should all see this site. As I was telling you, what are the reasons? Just I was thinking that it is the pressure to publish. While we are doing research, we don't want to reveal. You saw that study. It was two authors, and one of the authors did not know about the data. So the other person did data manipulation, did data falsification. The other author didn't know about it. So that was mistrust also, but then that was irresponsible behavior also on the part of other author. But in case there are 10 authors, maybe one of the authors who has done the data collection, the 10th author may not even know about him, though therefore that revealing is all the more prevalent in such cases. And since at times we do not discuss with others, just to, not to be exposed, showing our incompetence, and the lack of mentorship is very important these days. As we all know, that the role of supervisor, the role of mentor is very important. Then it should not be only for namesake. I think the amount of efforts that the researcher has to put, the same amount of efforts the supervisor too need to put in, and I think that is something. So finally, I believe that we need to build a research culture. We should not be measuring people on the basis of research. It should be done in a own relaxed way. It should not be directly linked, because everyone cannot really go as in a particular way, in a particular measurable way. It has to be relaxed research culture. It should be a strong training in research. And these days I have seen in UGC also, CBCS, at the undergraduate level, research has been introduced. So if research, component of research, we start understanding right from our undergraduate level till we reach our MPhil and PhD, I think we will be trained better in research. And infrastructure is very important, particularly in the developing countries. We need support from administrators. We need support in terms of infrastructure. Strict evaluation is another thing. I know we all of us know that what amount of pressure people have to face while they are evaluating. I think these pressures should not be allowed. It should be I think something where the personal biases should not be there. And then we should encourage innovation. In case people are innovating, they should not be suppressed. And we should support non-traditional findings also. This is very important if we want to see less of such misconduct in research. I just would like to share Dr. Big's findings that India has 1.93 times higher probability of having problematic images. So image manipulation is highest in India. It is on what the average is of the world. It is 1.93 times in India. So this is really something of concern, and I think we should all worry about it. And an example here, that in Sweden, the government has passed a law for a national misconduct agency that will take care of this. And I think with time, it will happen in other countries also. I would be happy to take up questions. Thank you all for a patient listening. I don't know whether I could be really understood or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Jaideep Sharma, for your highly informative inputs regarding the implications and the impact of research misconduct, which, as per you, you said it includes fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism in proposing, performing, reviewing, or reporting the research work. It's a very sorry state of affairs that some of the researchers are actually indulging in it, and they do not realize that retraction is even worse as far as their image is concerned. So it's a very important topic and we should pay heed to it. We should not indulge in any such misconduct and then take care of our image, basically. So thank you very much. May I now request Neha to take up the question answers, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. I will start with the questions. The first questions that Dr. Ajay Kumar Prajapati is asking is, how can we find out plagiarism of a book or thesis while many books or theses are not uploaded on internet or website?
See, you are right. When you talk of the plagiarism using software, it has to be available in the database. So in case it is not there, you will not be caught. Don't worry. So it is only in case it is available at the back end, then only it comes to light. Otherwise, it is not. You have yourself given the answer.
Okay, now I have...
Neha, just a minute, please. Professor Jaideep, Professor S.P. Singh is there on the line. She is asking about some question to you. Yes, Madam Singh, you can ask the question.
I'm going to get disturbed. Please repeat it from the phone.
Yes, you can tell me the question. I'll repeat it. अच्छा, आप वेट कीजिए. नेहा सेकंड क्वेश्चन पूछती है, मैं आपको पैनलिस्ट ले लेती हूँ. Just wait for a few minutes, okay? Neha, you can take up the second question. I'll make her the presenter. I'll make her the panelist.
All right, ma'am.
You can take up the second question, please.
There are questions from Sanmati Jain. How do editors check or validate for data falsification or fabrication done by authors?
That is why I was mentioning that data is available in raw form, and then it is seen whether the way it has given results, it will give that or not. And in case, as far as image manipulation is concerned, there are ways and means. But when you talk of data manipulation, in case the reproducibility is not there, that makes for the manipulation. Otherwise also, the context also makes it clear whether it has been manipulated or not. Because data might be used over again and again for different purposes, and that really enables the people to catch whether it has been manipulated or not.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, she's not here. I'll ask the other question. Dissertation is compulsory for MEd students, but mostly students are not comfortable. So how do we create interest? Because they usually do not take any interest in this.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes, sir. Dissertation is compulsory for MEd students, but most students are not comfortable. So how do we create interest? Because they usually do not take interest in this.
See, I think we need to motivate our students, because dissertation is one area which enables a person to really put his or her learning into practical reality. One can really work in his or her own way. It's a ground open for us. We can put our dreams and thoughts into action. So maybe that there is a lack of motivation on the part of students. We need to really tell the purpose of dissertation, why the dissertation is part of their curriculum, what they can do in the curriculum for dissertation. They should be introduced to the review of literature, which is very important part of any research. I remember during our BLS, in the first semester, we were taught review of literature. The project was in two parts. One part was reviewing literature and reporting the review of literature. The second part was doing the empirical research that we used to do. So I think you introduce them to literature, you give them some very assignments in which they have the liberty to practice, to innovate, and then you introduce them to this project and suggest them some areas. You have to nurture them for this. They have to be trained for it. An interest has to be created. I think it is at times because they lack direction that they are not really able to appreciate the importance of education, and they do not really take interest in it.
All right. Thank you. I think Professor Singh is there. She can ask the question.
Yes, Neha, she has been made the panelist. Professor
Yes.
Singh, you can ask the question, please.
She has not unmuted herself, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll do it. Professor Singh, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can.
Yes, you can ask the question.
Okay. In fact, first thing I wanted to congratulate Professor Devi. He has made a wonderful presentation, and I would rate this presentation among the best presentations I have heard so far. That was the first thing. And I think here,
Thank you, ma'am.
I think Jadip, you have done a lot of research to make this paper. This is a new area which you talk about, and think about that we can give it to somebody for research as a research topic. This is a wonderful new area which I have heard about it. I just wanted to have two small questions. One is that some books are undergoing reflection as well as articles.
Yes.
What is the situation in case of Indian library? Books are, by Indians in library science. Some books or articles have been reflected in our field also in India.
Not yet. I have not come across such cases in India. In science.
That should be area.
Before Professor Jadip, you answer, I endorse her question. I'm really grateful for the topic which you have selected. I'm really happy.
No, it was a new area, yaar. I never heard of these things, reflection. I was listening for
True.
Although I have taught for 30 years, but here cases it gives Achha, how do we know about reflection? Is there some source for information about it? Suppose I want to find out in library science, how do I go about it? Am I not able to listen you, Jadip?
No. Professor Jadip, just a minute, you have muted yourself. Yes, Professor Jadip?
Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot, ma'am. And really, this has been on my mind since quite long. I have been reading it, and I have been really wondering that how much of a problem this has created. That those articles and books which lack in something, and we are using them, and this is a cycle that is going on. I use it, someone else uses it, and this goes on and on. This affects the whole literature.
Article has been retracted. Article has been cited 700 times. You already told this thing.
Yeah, 700 times. 700 times. So this is really something which need to be worried about, and we have to catch the problem where from it starts. So I think we have to really think about it. We need to discuss. We need to write about it. And I really admit that I have not come across a case in library information science, and it's not that there are not such cases. I remember from my student days itself, I have been hearing about it. I have been knowing from people that how people have done it. But then we need to really worry about it, and we need to, not only for our discipline, we need to help those in the other disciplines also, as far as the role of a librarian is concerned, what role he can play, and see that how this problem will be lessened by our role.
Thank you so much, but I think we should give this a study for library science to somebody to do research. Thank you very much, Professor Preeti. Thank you, Professor Devi. And thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Dr. Jivesh Bansal is to ask some question to Professor Jaydeep. Jivesh, you can go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
First of all, I feel very proud that you are here, and I am feeling proud that I did my master's level project. I am I am a student of such a teacher that Professor S.P. Singh just said that I have never heard such a good library science department of Punjab University have organized so much lectures around. Perhaps it is the 20th lecture, and this is the best lecture. And I also sometimes.
Jivesh, do I interrupt you in between? हम बाजी मार गए.
So it's a wonderful, and I also have some readings last 2-3 months regarding this academic integrity and this research ethics. But this is also very new to me because I have this falsification and fabrication, plagiarism, dishonesty. I have gone through MIT University and the various different universities websites to study this concept of academic integrity. But this reflection is also a very new topic to me, and how the various articles are being detected, and what is the value of research, and this, and the way you have explained it, that is very wonderful idea, and I will also go ahead in this area. So these are my just comments, and I have no question. I can have a question to another thing.
Thank you, Dr. Jivesh. You are feeling proud today. I am feeling proud since so many years when I came to know you are a university librarian, that too in a very well-known university, Punjab University.
Sir, I did nothing. Otherwise, I did my master's level under such persons. I feel that I can go much ahead than this.
Thank you.
I feel I have no hesitation to say that after doing my education under such wonderful teachers, I am still not produce anything of much value.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Jaydeep, are you still there? Sir, you have muted yourself again.
Mute. I have unmuted him.
Okay, last question is a couple of questions, but they're all connected to the same thread. How do we come to know if is retracted? Can an author publish his or her retracted content? And the last part, how can we recognize retracted papers even when they're peer-reviewed and have high citations? They're all interconnected, so I put all these two questions together. So you're again on mute. No, it's done. Okay, sir. Please go ahead.
Please.
No.
I'm not able to get your question.
I'll repeat, sir. The first part is, how do we come to know that the article is retracted? Second is, can an author republish his or her retracted content? And third and the last part of the question is, how do we recognize retracted papers even when these are peer-reviewed and have high citation?
See, I have got you. Only roughly I got you. First is that how do we come to know if it is retracted?
Yes, the first question is this. And second is, can it be republished if we retract it? And third one is that if it is highly cited paper and it's also peer reviewed, then how do we come to know that now this paper has to be retracted once it has been done? All right.
See, once a paper is retracted, as I told you, it's open for complaints. Anyone can complain for it. Then it is the authors, editors, publishers. They are the people who are concerned. They try to. That is why I said it's not a one-step process that this is retracted. It is under consideration. In case there is a complaint, people feel it should be retracted, it is considered, and it takes due time before it is retracted. It is a legal process, as I was giving you that example that his attorney is replying for him. So there are certain issues on the basis of which a paper will be retracted, and once it's retracted, it is mentioned, yes, it is retracted, it is available in the open, and people come to know it is retracted. There is nothing wrong if it is retracted. People would like to improve upon it, submit it again, and it may be accepted later on. So that is a process. See, these are all academic processes. There may be faults, there may be drawbacks. One can always improve. So there is nothing wrong if it has been pointed out. But then anyone can point out it. One has to bring it to the notice of the publisher, of the journal, wherever it is published. They will take it up with the author and others, and then this is how it is done.
All right. Thank you, sir. I'll take up the last question for the day now. What is image manipulation? Please explain with example to make it more clear.
I would have loved to show you some cases in image manipulation. See, as if you see the definition of misconduct, that in case you are suppressing anything, you are altering anything, you are modifying anything, and you are not reporting, it is manipulation. And if in case it happens with image, it is called image manipulation. And people do it to make it appeal, to make it acceptable. And there are ways and means to catch it. I told you there are experts in this area. They can tell naked eye also. They make use of technology also. But then there are no standard software for such things. But it is catching up. And maybe I don't know, there are some softwares also that they use. Maybe they use allied softwares. But then as far as I read the literature, I came across some people who are really expert in this area, and they say they work on a whole lot of cases in this area, and it is with the eye and technology that they can tell how it has been manipulated. And okay.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the information. It was really new for us as well. We have not heard about this earlier, about all these things that you have informed us. Now I would request Dr. Khushpreet Singh Barar to give a vote of thanks. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Neha. On behalf of Department of Library and Information Science, Punjab University, Chandigarh, I thank Dr. Jaideep Sharma, Professor, Department of Library and Information Science, IGNOU, New Delhi, for accepting our invitation to deliver this talk. Sir, your talk is very informative. You explained very clearly the impact and implication of research misconduct. The examples used in your talk are very alarming and surprising. This is the right time to implement or cultivate the values and ethics among the students and research scholars. UGC has also introduced the papers of ethics in PhD coursework to control this problem of data and base manipulation and the plague of research misconduct. There is need to include COPE guidelines also. Sir, your talk is very much useful for research scholar as well as for research supervisors. I also thank the authorities of Punjab University, especially the worthy Vice Chancellor, Professor Rajkumar Ji, for allowing us to organize this series. I also thank Professor S.P. Singh, Professor Emeritus University of Delhi, Delhi, to participate in this webinar. I also thank all the participants. I also thank the faculty members, research scholars, and students for their support. We will meet again on 29th June. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor Jaideep. Thank you very much. And thank you all the participants. As Dr. Khushpreet has said, we'll be meeting on 29th at 7 p.m. most probably in the international webinar. Till then, my request to you is to engage in significant, valid, reliable, truthful, and trustworthy research work, and do not indulge in any immoral research practice like plagiarism, etc., as per Professor Jaideep. Thank you.
Very good, immediate good
I
advice.
have done the misconduct without a court. But I have clarified myself as per you.
Very good, very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.